My name is Lauren Winkelman, and my firm is Rock Money Scissors Financial Coaching. And my unexpected hobby is making macarons.
Welcome to Unexpected Hobbies of Financial Advisors, the podcast where we interview fellow financial advisors about their pursuits and pastimes beyond their professional persona, some of which may be surprising to their colleagues and clients. We're interested in what makes them tick and how their unexpected hobbies might or might not relate to their everyday lives. Here's our discussion with this week's guest. Welcome to the Unexpected Hobbies of Financial Advisors podcast. I'm Brian Wright with Fiduciary CFO, alongside my co-host and fellow financial advisor, Joshua Walker.
I'm really enjoying myself so far.
The episode is young, though. We'll see. Joining us today is Lauren to talk about her unexpected hobby, making macarons.
Or is it macarons? We had a discussion earlier today about what it is we're going to be talking about and what we're calling it. So please educate us dummies that just like to eat and don't know what we're eating. Tell us what's going on.
I learned that it could be both. I called it macarons, and I don't have any sort of French accent, so I'm from Texas. So I say macarons. So people might get that confused with the little chocolate and coconut thing, but I make the little cookies sandwiches. That's my thing.
They look like marshmallow sandwiches, but they are not marshmallow sandwiches.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what we thought we were going to be talking about today, but Joshua and I had a spirited debate about what it is and how do you pronounce it and all of those things.
And Google was no help because Google gave us every possible wrong answer. And now we know the expert has spoken.
I always thought it was a macaroon because I'd always recognized macaroon, that 3-syllable, the double O. But as it turns out, what you make is spelled with 1 O, not 2, correct?
Yes. And I learned that as well. So when I was Googling, how I wanted to start on this adventure, I had it in my mind I wanted to make the sandwich, and I learned quickly that, it can be interchangeable, but it's spelled with 1 O.
So how did you get started in this adventure then? Did you specialize as a sub-niche of baking, or did you come at this from scratch?
Yeah, so I started this in 2020. I think most people probably were trying to find something to fill their time, and that's kind of where my journey started. And I don't know, like a crazy person, I decided to go with the most difficult thing in baking because there's all sorts of intricacies in terms of the type of egg whites that you use. If it's raining outside, that's a thing. The type of oven, if it's electric, gas, convection, all these different things. I learned so many things that I did. I just wanted to bake. And I went with the most challenging of all, I think, baking dishes in terms of starting out my baking journey. So,
interest in chocolate chip cookies with the recipe on the back of the bag, right? Not too elementary for you, right?
And you weren't going to do sourdough, apparently.
Well, that came later. That's this year's project, but...
Okay, so cooking being both art and science, it sounds like this skews really deep onto the science side. If you're having to worry about what is the humidity level in the ambient environment, there's a lot going on in order to get it fluffy the way it's supposed to be.
Yes. And I bought a scale because it's based on not the American measuring unit. So I learned a lot. It was,
The origin is French?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. But they've been all around the world forever because they're amazing and delicious. And of course, that would be one of the things the French are known for.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And were you cooking for one, or were there many people in the household that were able to enjoy your efforts?
Yes. So I was cooking for my husband and then my in-laws. They were my testers for a while, and they enjoyed the flavors, but the looks were not quite ready for social media. It was definitely the behind the scenes scraping things off a mat and not
couldn't
looking.
fix that picture with a filter then, right?
No, there's not a filter good enough. I mean, AI now maybe could have, but I don't think a filter
Hey,
would
AI,
have fixed
create what I meant to make.
exactly.
And what are your
But let me
flavors? The flavors that you were making, how broad and adventurous and creative do you get, or do you stick with the classics?
So I started with the classics and got creative with like the food coloring and stuff and got creative with the metal. The metal is a little bit easier. It's kind of, you can really, use any sort of like icing from a cupcake icing to pie filling and then like line it. So you can get really creative with the metal. So I got kind of creative with the metal and just did plain vanilla. But I did make one for Christmas that year that looked like a Grinch. And the inside, I melted Andes candies and did like a little bit of chocolate. So the cookie was kind of like a minty.
Yeah.
And then the inside was like the chocolate Andes candies. So
And
got a little bit creepy.
how deep into the seasonal aspects do you go? Do you have a pumpkin spice or Valentine's year round? Always the new adventure?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It just depends. So sometimes I'll see something on Pinterest. That's where I get kind of my inspo. And oh, I love that. Or I'm inspired by the different colors that you can make it. I've seen I've never tried this just because it looks really challenging, but they've got like these unicorn looking ones and they use glitter and gold and yeah. So it's like next level up there.
Sure, sure. And have you been able to then expand beyond the four walls of your house? Is this the sort of thing that you can, now that people are getting back together again and it's no longer 2020, do you take these to neighborhood picnics and yard sales, or who else gets to enjoy them now?
Yeah. So they take a little bit of time to create. So I have to have the time and the space to create them. And then once you're in it, you have to be committed. So you have to make sure that you use the batter within the right time frame. And then you have to watch them in the oven because you don't want them to burn or get overbaked because then they don't taste good. But yeah, to answer your question, sometimes I'll take them as like a little treat for family functions. I've never sold them, mainly because I see everyone else's that are out there and they're just so beautiful and mine aren't quite there yet.
Oh,
And
sounds like
so,
imposter syndrome.
Yeah, they bought theirs at
ah,
Costco. They just
like a
repackaged
machine
them.
made.
Yeah.
Yes, that it is an art. And so I love to do it and I love to share and I love to spoil people who are willing to try, my creations. But yes, anytime that I get to bring them to a family event or celebrate somebody's birthday, I love to get to do that for sure. Yes. So you use almond flour and you have to sift it a certain way. And then, yeah, and then you have to use egg whites. And if you get any, and it can't be like the store bought in like a container egg whites, it has to be proper. Like you have to break the egg, get the yolk out. If you get any yolk in it, it can make the cookie go flat. And so, yeah. You, so the store bought, the store bought egg whites are, the store bought air, I keep saying air. The store-bought egg whites are processed, and so they actually are heated to a specific temperature, I guess, to protect or preserve them in a way. Yep, and so that's why I learned that the hard way because my friend was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for you. I've got all these egg whites, like, I found them on sale. Let's just get to baking," and we learned the hard way that, no, they don't rise as long no matter how long you keep them in the oven. So, yeah. Yeah, so there's, the other ingredient in the cookie, I don't remember exactly, I follow a recipe pretty strictly because it's very, rigid in what you've gotta add, but it's mainly, almond flour, um, powdered sugar, egg whites, and, there's one other ingredient and maybe, vanilla or some sort of flavoring. And you wanna be careful when you add the flavoring because you don't want it to be too moist. It's part of the art, you learn through all these different things. And so there's a flavoring that you can add to it. You can add powdered flavoring and food coloring, but when it gets to be the liquid, you have to just be careful. You don't want it too wet. Yeah, it makes it really difficult. They just don't get the crispiness. They turn out really chewy. Yeah, correct. Yep. Yeah, so I use, like, a silicone mat to make them easy to kind of get off of the get out of the oven, and then you let them cool for a little bit. While they're cooling, that's when I normally make, like, whatever middle gooiness that goes in between the cookies. Mm-mm. Yeah,
So when you
yeah.
make these, do you go into it with are you going to make a half a dozen different flavors, or do you have to go into the kitchen with like, okay, these are going to be the Andes Candies ones, and you just kind of rinse and repeat, and or can you go in and can you go into the kitchen and come out with a wide variety of flavors?
I haven't tried that yet, mainly because you have to get the batter just right, and you wanna mix the flavors in early so they can get mixed well and get to the consistency that you need. So normally what I've tried splitting it, like, in half, and so I'll go with, like, one is vanilla and cinnamon and the other one's Andes Candies, for example. And so I've done 2, but I haven't gotten crazy with, like, a dozen different flavors.
Sure. And when you're
Yeah.
baking, do you like have to block off, hey, this Saturday is baking day and we're doing this for 12 hours? Or is it, hey, it's 10:30, I'm going to whip up a batch?
Yeah, it's the latter. If I have the only thing is, like, the egg whites need to be room temperature, and so if I wanna bake in the morning, I probably need to leave them over at night, but if I wanna bake for the day, I can leave them out during the day and then, like, bake in the afternoon or the evening.
They have to be room temperature. Okay. And then as you're whipping it, you can't get them too warm, but it's not like a custard that you're going to break or something because it's going to end up in the oven eventually. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And does anybody
Yeah.
bake with you or is it a solo project when you're in the kitchen?
So, this is probably a little bit embarrassing, and is another reason why I don't, sell these things is I have 2 German Shepherds, and I try to keep them out of my kitchen, but they like to sit there and watch, and so I make sure that everything's clean and sanitary. But anybody who has dogs knows that fluff gets everywhere, and so, like, my kitchen is just our home kitchen. I don't have, like, this fancy it's just a normal kitchen. So I have 2 German Shepherds that sit there and look at me like, "Mom, that smells amazing, and I think you should share with me."
Yeah.
And yeah, so and my husband, he's a good cheerleader on the sideline. He was just like, "Wow, babe, that smells amazing. I can't wait to eat it." And so
Do you take requests? Like, say somebody's like, "Hey, I want one that's peanut butter and jelly." Do you, or is it strictly you are your own inspiration with the help of Pinterest?
oh, both. I can do both. Like, if I'm feeling like, "Ooh, I've seen this on Pinterest, I wanna try this." My husband likes lemon flavored things, so I've tried to expand with, like, getting lemon flavored stuff, and so I've tried a bit of both.
So, have there been lessons that you've been able to translate from the world of cooking that are applicable to the world of financial advising and coaching?
Yes. So one of the ones that I think about often is I decided to go on this journey of learning something really challenging, kind of pushing the limits of I wouldn't call myself I would say I'm an average baker, an average cook. Like my food is it's good, but it's good. So I pushed the limits on really trying something fun and creative, and with that, going in and becoming an advisor, you get I think just overwhelmed sometimes with all the cool tools and all the neat, like, hacks and tricks and all these different things, and I got, like, this really cool, macaron silicone platter that had, like, these little cutouts. I got this little, like, I don't know, it kinda looks like a donut-shaped thing to, like, squeeze the batter, and after going through all of that, I didn't need any of that. I just needed to get back to the basics, like, focus on just a normal piping bag with a normal piping end and a flat, regular silicone like, I had all the tools that I needed. I didn't have to go out and get all these special things. I just had to show up, give myself the opportunity to try and fail and get some feedback along the way. And so I think ultimately that's what I learned is I had a lot of fun doing it. But once I kind of let go of those expectations, like, oh, it has to be perfect all the time, and I need all these shiny tools and create like crazy things, I really enjoy getting to do it. And it's a fun hobby to get into. And I love sharing like my art and this creative piece of like goodness with other people.
I'm guessing if you wanted to go deep into the world of tools and gadgets, you totally could. There's lots
Oh,
of room to run
absolutely.
there. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. You can get like thermometers and like get a special oven and all these different things. And I think maybe if I was taking this seriously and I wanted to become like the Olympic version of like a macaron baker, maybe I'm not going to go that path, but it really is just more of a hobby that I enjoy and can really do anywhere if I have the ingredients. And so it's just really just working those muscles and taking it in and using what I have.
If somebody has a tiny, tiny kitchen and they're stuck with a microwave and a toaster oven, could they do this, or does it require a full, proper oven?
So based on the pros, like the people who do this for a
The
living
Olympians,
and
right?
yeah, they recommend like a gas oven because you can keep the temperature really consistent. There's no way that you could do this with a microwave. You could maybe get by with a toaster oven if it's a small batch, but you really want to bake everything evenly.
Okay.
So you don't want to leave your batter that you worked really hard to perfect out on the counter while your other stuff is baking. So
Okay, sure. So it's work the batter and then all the batter goes in at the same time. So how many would fit if you've got a standard size oven? How many is too many? What's the sweet spot?
yeah, so on one recipe, it makes about 12 cookies, which are 24 halves, and that'll fit. And they're like maybe a little bit bigger than a quarter, and they'll fit on one probably regular or large cookie sheet that'll fit in a normal oven. Yeah.
How broad can they get before they don't keep their, because the essence of the form is a flat top, right? And so eventually they're too big, that they get too domed, more like a Kaiser roll. So how big before you've breached the bounds of the definitions?
You can get them to be, like normal cookie size. Yeah, you can get them to be pretty big, but that batter, you just have to make sure that they've got enough space because you want them to kind of bubble up and then they kind of grow. And that's like where the magic happens is they grow up and then they get wide and that creates that dome.
Now I'm
Yeah, so
thinking
you
of
can get
I'm thinking of Oreos, all the 10,000 flavors of Oreos, but they're always the same standard size. Why don't they make, if the makers of Oreo, Nabisco, if you're listening, give me a 4-inch Oreo and that'll be.
I think it would be hard to take the other side off and like lick the icing. I mean, that's how you eat Oreos, right? Like,
We'll let our dogs show us how.
So do you spend your whole time while they're in the oven just standing and staring through the window? Is there just like a really sweet spot of time where it's like they're done, or is it pretty routine around time driven?
so yes and no. Again, it kind of depends on the oven, if it's wet outside, that sort of thing. But most of the time, they don't take very long to bake. They take maybe 12-ish minutes. So normally when that's happening, I will go to the sink and I'll start like rinsing out like my dishes and kind of get my prep area for making the cookies all back together. So yeah.
And they come out, you're cooking them at what, 325, 350. So they come out hot. Do they have to cool
Mhm.
before you decorate? Is decorate the right word? The filling, whatever comes next.
Yeah.
You have to wait and be patient like a grown up.
Yes. So if you don't let them cool a little bit, they can still be kind of um not gooey, but not firm and kind of the cookie part of it. So you don't want to go scooping too quickly. That was like my first mistake. I was like, oh my gosh, these cookies are great. And I just go and scoop like the whole thing. It's just a mess at the end of just all these like rolled up macaroon cookies. I'm like, all of that work. why did I do this? So yeah, you've got to wait a little bit to let them cool.
And you talked about being somewhat distressed at the appearance of your early efforts. Is that something that you've been able to grow in as well? Or have you sort of plateaued at a certain level of, dang, these cookies are still ugly?
So in the very beginning, it's all about the consistency of the batter. So you've got the egg whites that you fluff until they're basically like you make meringue with these egg white. And then you fold that into your dry ingredients. And so when you start doing that, you want the consistency of kind of like pancake batter where it's kind of thick, but will ooze kind of out of your piping bag. If you don't get if you don't sift your almond flour and you have chunks, they look kind of like monsterish, the cookies do. They get kind of bubblish and they're not that like beautiful dome-like effect.
Yeah.
And then if you undermix them, they get real flat. If you overmix them, they do the same thing. They kind of grow and then they
Collapse.
They have big cracks in the middle.
When do you know, okay, I didn't ruin these? Like, when do you get to like exhale that like, okay, great. Is it when they come out of the oven, or is that still like really valuable time of like, okay, how are these going to cool? What's going to happen? Like, when do you know you're in the clear? Like, all right, I nailed this batch.
Most of the time it's there's probably two times or two different indicators that I've like nailed it or it's a flop and they're just going to be delicious. The first one is when I'm making the batter and it's good. There's no lumps in it. And when I pipe it onto the silicone pad, it's like nice and they stay real consistent. They don't ooze out. They stay where I want them. That's like, okay, got a good batch. Hopefully I didn't overdo it. Going into the oven, for the first probably few minutes, you don't really know. But when you start seeing them grow, that first little pop of their growth, it's like, okay, now we're doing good. And then when you pull them out of the oven, if they're all smooth and beautiful, you're like, all right, I did a good job. This is great.
And do you have a gas oven? Like the pros to say that you should?
Yes. Yeah. So I have a gas oven that I cook in, which I was very fortunate for that. But I have tried to cook them in other ovens, and I do notice a difference. So you just have to keep an eye on what the cookies look like because they'll bake at a different temperature. And sometimes the gas or the electric doesn't keep it as even.
So if you hadn't had the Wright oven, is this something that you would have continued beyond the first couple of batches, or would you have moved on to a different milieu?
I think I would have, as bound and determined as I was to make these look beautiful, I think I would have stuck it out. I would have kept trying. I probably would have gone down some different rabbit holes. I'm like, okay, how do you make the perfect macaroon with an electric oven or whatever I was missing? I really wanted to give it my best shot and see what I could do with what I had.
Sure. Sunk costs. Yeah. And are you whipping them by hand, or do you have a hand mixer or a stand mixer? What's your preference there?
The first few batches, I was whipping them by hand. Don't recommend. That is a workout. But now I have like a little KitchenAid, and it's like a piece of art too. So I have fun. I like look at it, and it's like this beautiful blue. I'm like, oh, I'm making macaroons, and it's like a whole thing.
Good. All right. And is this something you get to share with clients, or do you want to avoid? I mean, I can see you can go either way with that. Do your clients, and do you have people in the office, your coworkers that you get to share with as well?
Yeah. So when I was baking at the time, I was working remotely, and all of my coworkers, most of them lived on the West Coast. None of them really lived close. And I didn't know how well they would make it, like if I wanted to ship them, because you can get things shipped like that. I just didn't know how well they were so delicate. It's like, well, I don't know how to ship these. And
Right.
so it's like, I never tried to ship them that way.
Well,
Really,
we
I
can
only
give
shared.
you our address in case you'd like to change that.
Yeah, we
Okay,
can
new pictures.
try
Okay.
it. Yeah. So, just for the purpose of making it, the best product you can get, certainly.
Sure. Research.
Which, yeah,
Yes,
we're
absolutely.
helping. We're helpful.
Yes.
So you're keeping them inside the four walls of Texas then, but clients? or the
No,
customers?
I haven't shared them with clients yet. Mainly just, I'm a recovering perfectionist. And so I don't want that to be held against me, my baking skills versus like my financial planning skills. So
Your recovery could yet be more perfect. Right. Okay.
yeah.
The sign will be like when your husband stops telling you they're great and starts suddenly like, oh, you know what? These probably have some more work to do. That's when you know, because he doesn't want those to leave the house.
Yeah.
That'll be your tell.
Is there a way
Yeah.
to make them?
So
Yeah, go ahead.
go ahead.
I was going to
Well,
say cheese and booze. My follow-up questions are about cheese and booze. So remember cheese and booze, but say your thing first.
Oh, I was just gonna say so far, the complaint has never been about like the taste or the flavor. It's always like, okay, these don't look like a cookie, but they
Oh,
taste delicious.
fighting words.
All right. There you go.
Okay, so is it strictly sweet stuff, or do you ever use mascarpone, ricotta, or more in a savory direction?
Really? I have never thought about that. Mainly because the cookie part requires the powdered sugar. So the cookie part is very sweet.
Yeah.
But I wonder, like pairing, like maybe bacon and like some sort of, I don't know, like peanut butter cookie, like some sort of like maple bacon or something. I don't know. But yeah, most of the cookies are pretty sweet. And I think getting into the savory, I don't know. I'm thinking like a chicken and waffles flavored macaroon, like, I don't know.
You are in the South.
Okay, and then the waffle batter is plenty airy and fluffy, so that's not so crazy, I thought. But it has
Yeah.
regular flour. Okay, well, and then do any alcohol infused mix in the filling, amaretto flavor or whatever,
Bailey's.
for example.
Yes. Yes. I think you're giving me some inspiration now. My husband likes to sip on bourbon occasionally. And I'm
Bourbon
thinking maybe
bacon.
maybe a bourbon infused, or maybe a lime cookie with like a tequila infused with, lime zest in the middle. I don't know.
Yeah, when you dip it in salt and
Yeah.
You could. You dip it in anything, right?
all right. And it sounds like this is one of the hobbies. We've talked to a lot of people where the barriers to entry is very high, that unless you're born into a horse family, then you're not going to go breed horses. But really all you need is ingredients and an oven and the determination to make it happen. So anybody could do this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think the other thing that I learned not being a very good cook at the beginning was read the recipe first, like all the way through, and then start. Like I got ahead of myself so many times. I'm like, oh no, I didn't do that. And like it was a flop. So that's a piece of advice I would recommend people getting started is top to bottom, read the full recipe and then start with, preparing your ingredients and prepping the oven and all that sort of stuff.
Which is in contrast to so many other fields. Like, if you want to have a successful retirement, well, just start saving. Just when you're 19, you got your job, you start saving. And I guess the most recent Kittis and Carl episode I've listened to was like, it's version 0, just put something out into the world, just start doing something. But sometimes you really need to think all the way through all the steps before you fire up the oven and start throwing flour around the kitchen. Just,
Yeah.
where's this going to go?
I mean, you can. I did. Like, you can just get started. But if you are going to get started, if somehow this has inspired you to grab a whisk or a KitchenAid and your almond flour, read the full recipe first. I promise you won't be disappointed.
And you somewhat, in a spirit of humility, referred to yourself as not a very good cook. What was your baseline level going into 2020? That where were you starting from?
If I could cook a meal that I did not burn to where it wasn't edible, like it wasn't that great.
Low bar then. You were starting relatively close to the starting line.
How did you
Yes.
survive?
Oh, my husband's a pretty good cook.
Okay.
So yeah.
Like I'm the cook in my family, but like if I couldn't, like my wife can hold her own.
Do you
so
bake much? 'Cause I know your specialties are grilling and especially chili.
I can bake.
It's a different world.
It is a way different world.
Nope.
Yeah, I can bake, but she's more of the baker. She's the accountant. Like she follows the rules, and I use the rules for the guideline, and then I throw the recipe in the trash, and then I end up running to the trash 2 or 3 more times while I'm doing it to remember what step 3 and 4 were. So that's
Yeah.
my experience of baking usually.
Yeah.
It's edible. It's not going to a state fair though. Do you have aspirations to take yours to a state fair? Texas has quite the state fair, you know.
It does. I think the first thing that I might want to do, just because we live in a great community, is maybe do the community farmers market. Try that first and maybe get some feedback on flavors or
Yeah.
consistency or, how pretty they look. Like, am I on the right path? I'd probably start there first, but then, I don't know, maybe make an entry into the state fair and win a ribbon. Like, that would be really cool.
If you wanted to really impress somebody and put your best foot forward, what would be the flavoring that you went with and the color?
Let's see. I would probably go with a pretty neutral, like a vanilla cookie, and then do like a blueberry lemon zest kind of middle with a little bit of buttercream on the outside. So like have the middle be like kind of a jelly jam sort of thing.
Yeah, like Jammy Dodger kind of thing. And does the top ever get decorated? Is that how you made the Christmas themed Grinch ones? The top surface, is that a palette as well?
Yeah. So I would normally do like sprinkles, or you've got this edible glitter. You can do edible glitter. Yeah. But now the Andes candies, it looked like the Grinch heart. So I got these little heart sprinkles and put them on top of the green cookie. So that was a lot of fun.
Well, if somebody wanted, having heard this, got inspired and wanted to get into this, is there where's the best source for recipes? I mean, on Pinterest, you can get inspiration on what it's supposed to look like. Is that also the best source for the actual detailed instructions, or do you need to go with Betty Crocker or what?
Yeah, I went with Pinterest with everything. I got the ideas for the look, but also there's a wide variety of bakers out there that start at the beginning that have blog posts on like, oh, hey, here's some tips on XYZ. Or I found a really cool, I don't remember her name, but I found this really cool baker who was a professional and did this. And she shared some of her professional tips. And that's where I learned about how the type of oven can be impactful to how you bake. So yeah,
And
I would say Pinterest is the best place to start.
and when you hit the farmer's market and you see a stand with somebody selling these, do you immediately gravitate over there and strike up a conversation, or just purchase and enjoy, or how does that go? Or do you try to stay away? All of the above.
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. I love to go and like ask them just because I know the effort it takes to getting them a certain way. And so I just want to like give them a high five and enjoy them and see if they've got any tips or tricks for this area. Just being dry, we're real dry climate. And if there's any other tips that I could use to make my macarons just perfect.
So which corner of Texas are you in then? I'm guessing not the east.
No, so in the panhandle of Texas, we're literally right in the middle. So I'm near Amarillo, Texas.
Yeah.
So you heard George Strait, Amarillo by morning. That's us.
I know Amarillo is a way stop on the way to the Grand Canyon, but definitely dry. Yeah, it's not a very moist environment. Okay.
Yeah.
So can you have, I guess in that environment, I guess you can artificially, like you can bring in humidifiers and things like that. Like, does that come into play at all with when you're cooking and in the kitchen, or is it really, or do you look at the weather forecast to decide whether you're going to bake these things on this weekend?
It's mainly if it's raining, it probably won't be a good time. So it's actually this climate it's good for macaroons because it's dry and it doesn't impact the liquid part of the batter, the cookie batter.
I wonder if they came from a certain part of France, because up near the channel, it's damp and gray, but then down in the wine regions, it's very, very sunny and dry. So maybe it's a southern France thing rather than a northern France thing. Or maybe I'm just making stuff up.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Have you created your own social media channel, your own Pinterest? Are you giving back to the Macaron community yet?
No, I'm not. But Pinterest will ask if I like made the recipe, and it'll ask me if it was a thumbs up or thumbs down. And if I was successful, I'll give it a little thumbs up. So that's my give back, and hopefully that will bring anybody looking for macaroon recipes that post kind of goes to the top because it was helpful.
That's a tough rating system though, because the recipe could
Right.
be fine, but the execution could just be not fine. And that could,
It's binary scale.
that's a tough crowd there. I'd be real hesitant to put anything out there for someone to rate if the delivery was relying on someone's execution, which you can only do so much in video to kind of help people along.
All right. So if people wanted to find your work out in the world, not professionally, the cooking stuff, where do they go to find more about the craft that you've created here with your hobby?
So I don't have a social media page or anything like that. I've got a LinkedIn. If you want to share recipes, I'd be happy to share recipes via LinkedIn. Just because I know a lot of people have different things, and I've met a lot of different bakers, and now I'm into sourdough. So, one thing leads to another. But yeah, LinkedIn is the best way to reach out, and I can share some progress pictures, but normally they don't last long enough. They're really delicious. They don't last long enough for me to take pictures. So.
How exactly did this lead to sourdough?
Oh, so I got in, to baking. Like, if I can do macaroons, I can probably do almost anything. And
Correct.
my cousin at the time, she was getting into sourdough, and she's like, "Oh, I've got all this different stuff." I thought, you know what? I'm gonna try this. So I got a sourdough starter, and if you thought macaroons were pretty temperamental, sourdough is on another level.
Really? I would have
Really?
assumed the macarons were that was jumping into the deepest part of the pool.
Much
But
more complicated.
not the case.
Well, it's you're learning a whole new language with sourdough. You've got to feed it, and there's all this other stuff. But yeah, so macaroons help me learn that there's give and take, and you just got to learn. It's part of the art of learning something new. And so yeah, with sourdough, I was a little bit more gracious and compassionate with myself with learning how to navigate the sourdough roll. But I've made some really good banana bread. I tried to make tortillas, and I got really good feedback that that's not the place to use sourdough. So if anybody has a good tortilla recipe, that was a flop. But hey, I
Sourdough?
tried. And it,
The sourdough tortilla? Like, is that?
That's what I heard her say.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know.
yes, yeah,
Credit
So,
for
no,
creativity and inspiration.
Yes.
wouldn't recommend.
And so then if you're just making a loaf of sourdough, is the threshold lower to consider it a success? Because there's so many different ways a macaron can go wrong. But if it's supposed to look like a lumpy hunk of dough, then you win.
Yeah, you would think that, but with sourdough, again, you need to start reading the recipe start to finish, because sometimes you need the sourdough to breathe and grow and ferment for like 24 hours. So, you ask the question, oh, if you just want to whip up some macaroons, during the day, absolutely, I can do that easy. Just need to put the eggs, get them warm, room temperature. With sourdough, like if we wanted to have rolls for tonight, I needed to start planning that like yesterday. So sourdough, it's a little bit.
All right. All right. And if people wanted to find your work as a financial coach, and where is your professional presence in the world?
Yeah, so you can visit my website, rockmoneyscissors.com.
Right.
And I
Yes.
also
What
have
is with that name? How did you? I mean, obviously I know the game, but how did you come to have that? What's the inspiration there?
Yeah, so I really like to make things that may be scary or complicated, fun and playful. And so that's just kind of like my personality, and things don't have to be fun. I love it, and I nerd out on financial planning stuff. And so I'm also like, I love puns, and I feel like that was like such a good fit. So Rock Money Scissors was created, and it's just to bring back fun and play into like learning how to budget and manage your finances. I just wanted to bring fun and playfulness to financial planning. And some people get, kind of head in the sand when it comes to that stuff. And I don't want it to be scary. I don't want it to be clean cut and professional. Like I am all those things. But when it comes to like being approachable and it being fun, like I really want to bring fun and personalize things and make it as simple as playing rock, paper, scissors. You just have to bring what you have, and we work with what you have and make it yours. So yeah.
Good. Well, thank you for sharing that with us and sharing all about the wonderful world of baking that you've gotten into. I think that's all the questions that I've got. How about you, Brian?
Yeah, I'm hungry now, so I'm going to go eat lunch. No, thank you, Lauren. This is really interesting.
Thanks for coming on and telling us about your unexpected hobby, making macarons.
Yes. Well, thank y'all so much for having me. It was a pleasure and I had so much fun. Thank you so much.
Unexpected Hobbies of Financial Advisors is brought to you by Fiduciary CFO, forward-thinking tax and planning solutions for business owners, like RIA firms and their business owner clientele. The opinions of Brian, Joshua, and their guests are for entertainment purposes and should not be construed as legal, tax, financial, or investment advice. You should know better than to take any of this content seriously. Thanks for being a fan of the show. If you were listening and thought to yourself, hey, I know somebody they need to have on the show, you can do something about that. Go to unexpectedhobbies.com/nominate and tell us who they are and what they do that's so interesting and unexpected. If we agree, we'll send them an invitation and we'll hope they say yes. Now it's unexpectedhobbies.com/nominate.